So for today on my project 2, I want to focus on student diversity. It comes from chapter 4, and the title of mine is Student Diversity, the Power of One Teacher Assisting One Student One Day at a Time. I did a demographic snapshot of my student A. He comes from a lower social economic family. He is an African American male. He resides in the Delta in South Arkansas or Southeast Arkansas. He is an IEP student, former self-contained resource student. This is his first year out in the normal classroom. Chapter 4 discusses the boy crisis, and this relates primarily to my student. The boy crisis discussed in this chapter centers around how boys in general tend to be assigned to special education, and it specifically notes ADHD and learning disabilities that are more common in boys. And with student A, this is exactly what he has been diagnosed with on his IEP. These children are held back, they drop out, and they end up in trouble more than girls. And it even goes on to state that specifically African American boys are significantly more at risk than African American girls. And with student A, like I said, he was resource contained for ADHD and a learning disability. So the theory I found on the internet, it talks about diversity pedagogy theory, or DPT. And DPT maintains that culturally inclusive teachers A, observe children's cultural behavior patterns to identify individual and group cultural competencies and skills, and B, they use this knowledge to guide their teaching decisions. And with my student, when I talk about him in a little bit, you'll be able to see how I related this to him. DPT also links cultural cognition in schooling in a single unit. It unites cultural practice with deep understanding of the cultural role plays in the social and cognitive development of children. And diversity pedagogy clearly recognizes the powerful active roles students play in their learning. Students have to be responsible for their learning as well as teachers in the classroom. So, that being said, let's talk about student A. Student A is an IEP student for ADHD and learning disabilities. Was previously in contained resource classes until this year. Student in my regular 7th grade English class. I also teach a pre-AP 7th grade English class. We've worked modifications, Modifications were and had been made to accommodate him. Our district requires that when a student with an IEP falls below a C in a subject area, that a conference must take place between the special education coordinator, a parent or guardian, and the student and the teacher. Student A had fallen to an F in my class, and a conference was required. This was at midterm that the conference was required. And it wasn't that he wasn't trying, but there were several problems that were going on. Those who actually showed up to attend the conference were Miss Campagna, and she is our special education coordinator, student A, and myself. The parent and guardian were called. They never showed up to attend. So these are the ones who attended. So I got to the conference before student A. I talked to Miss Campagna. I took a folder of his work and kind of briefed her on the demographics of the classroom that he's in. He was in my regular 7th grade English class. The demographics of that class were 13 students. 10 of those are boys. And they're not your typical, well, I guess they are your typical boys. But that class tends to be your more rambunctious boys. 5 of which are known to be troublesome, per se. You can't turn your back on one because the other four stir up the rest of the class. I have had a lady from our local co-op come in on classroom management. She does classroom management trainings throughout our district or throughout our region. She came in just for this class because I was having so much trouble managing this class. At one time, our high school principal and our superintendent and our Day Springs counselor have been in this room at one time observing to help. They are that much of a handful. So he was in this class, and I talked to Miss Campagna before student A got there, and she said, he just came out of resource contained, and we don't want him to struggle this much if he needs to be put back in. And I expressed to her that it's not the fact that he can't do the work. I think the demographics of the classroom are hindering him from doing the work. And so I explained to her pretty much what I've just told y'all. And when he got there, she asked him, she said, what can we do to make you more successful in Miss Story's classroom? And the first thing out of his mouth was, the other boys in this class make it really hard for me to focus, and they pull me in and get me talking and get me off track, and then sometimes I tend to get in trouble. Now, some of the accommodations I had made for him prior, especially with his ADHD, he does have problems sitting still. And I had taped off a square around his desk, and I explained to him, I understand for 45 minutes it's very hard for you to sit still. If at any time we're doing reading or at any time we're doing any type of projects, you can get up and you can move around, but you must stay in this taped off area. That way, he sits on the back row of my class. That way he can move around and he could get the jitters out without being a distraction to my total class. And it actually worked really well for him. And he even told Miss Campagna, this is something that Miss Story has done and it works for me. And I feel so much better since I can do this. But because of the other boys, that keeps me from being able to focus well enough on my work to make good grades in her class. So we actually have moved him to my pre-AP class. 2 weeks after his move, we took a test. He made the second highest grade in the test, in the class on the test. He did not require any additional time on that test. In fact, my pre-AP class has welcomed him with open arms. They have embraced him. I've even had one little girl who has requested to be his study partner, and he is doing absolutely wonderful in my class now. And it has made all the difference, just the demographics of one class to another. So I'm very proud of him. He's very, very proud of himself. And it's made all the difference in the world. So this is my project 2, submission for student diversity. Thank you.